It's getting really tough to stay up to date with everything. Like every 2 days there's new AI outposts coming up.
Yeah, but personally, I don't think you should. I started introducing this simple system. I have 2 newsletters that I enjoy reading, and they're quite short, like in 10 minutes. You get a high overview of what's going on.
There's a lot of really smart people in Europe. A lot of companies actually come to Europe because we have really good data security. They know their data and stuff's going to be in good hands. We're like the perfect market for the US. So that's already something cool.
So Europe is the new Switzerland for data.
It is.
A lot of data. And that's a good way to market yourself.
I think it's an advantage and we should use it.
The next big thing will be like when the LLMs come, general robots that you can use on whatever task you need at hand. That's one thing. And in genomics, I think that will be actually huge, which will probably change our species forever, where we'll be able to like change our DNA and engineer it to our liking. But I'm scared of that. I'm the most scared about because
maybe for somebody watching this episode and they are not familiar with your work, can you maybe just introduce yourself for people who don't know you?
My pleasure. I'm at heart a software and AI engineer. I started working into the domain 8 years ago, like an AI engineer, not an AI engineer as a software engineer. And I loved it, to be honest. Like I love building and creating stuff. But I always knew that I want to go into into AI for some reason. I don't know why. It was just I know I have to get there. So this was 8 years ago, not now when everybody wants to be into AI. And then I moved into a research position into like 3D object detection, tracking with leaders and runners. And to be honest, I had no clue what were the expectations, but that was the only position I had like exposure to and I could get. So I just took it. Like salary wise, it was a big drop because as I said, here in Romania, there's no money out of AI, especially like 6-7 years ago. So I had like to be okay with like a research level academia salary, which is usually lower, but yeah, it was still exciting. I knew it was a long-term investment into this. And then I realized that research is not for me. As I said, I love building, not reading papers and just trying out different algorithms. It's cool, but not for me. And then I realized that there's actually a lot more to AI because, as I said, that was just the beginning. That was the first exposure into the field. And in the beginning, it's really overwhelming to understand like all the different roles and scopes. Because when you come from a software engineering background, there's full stack, backend and front end, and that's it. It's a lot easier to like scope and label everything. Into AI, everything is fuzzy, everything is noisy. And it's hard to understand what you should follow, how should you sell yourself, what you should do. Especially now, when I started, it was a little easier. Now you have like data science roles, data analytics roles, data engineering roles, ML engineering roles, AI engineering roles, AI research, ML research, applied science, or whatever. Who knows what's out there?
Yeah. And the fun fact, they're all company specific. So like an ML engineer at this company is very different expectation from another company. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. Actually, I had a talk with someone like 2 weeks ago and worked at Amazon. And he said that they actually just have very company specific roles. So only they have this applied data scientist. So I started experimenting with this ML engineering and MLOps part. And then I realized actually here in Romania, there was this trend for contracting and freelancing, but not in the ML world, in the software engineering world. As I said, AI stuff, it was, and I think it still is an outlier here in my country of origin. But I said, yeah, let's try to do this. Why not? This is what I want to do. And otherwise, I will not be satisfied with my life. Again, as I did before, I just, from LinkedIn, I just got the first job that sounded, it took me on the right track. I know it wasn't like the end goal, but it was like just a step forward. And yeah, I started working as a contractor for a company from Israel, where it was a really small company that were doing like services into this field, into the AI field. And I had to work like on data science stuff, on ML engineering stuff, on MLOps stuff, so basically everything, which was really helpful. I had the chance like to lead many small projects end to end. It was tons of fun, but I wasn't satisfied because I was in a place where you build many proof of concept and MVPs as nothing gets to production. And then I moved to a more larger scale company, Metaphysic, where as an ML engineer, basically, I mostly work on taking stuff from research and just ship them into production. So I had to deploy stuff on AWS and on the on-prem infrastructure, and they had quite big models, like models that were require like 40, 60 VRAM of gigabytes, which it's quite hard for to accomplish on AWS. And they weren't working on multi GPU, so they weren't like there was very custom models that they weren't working like, okay, you get something from Hugging Face and it just works out of the box on whatever you want. You had like to customly build everything. But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, that was maybe for people who just joining the AI. Yes, there has been a time where you have to build a custom model for every use case, and you cannot just send everything to ChatGPT API. So that world still exists and
Yeah.
still exists right now. So
Yeah, I
uh,
think it still exists. Like if you want to scale, in my opinion, you most probably need to throw away these APIs, at least to some extent, but not entirely. Like I think its APIs are really powerful, like the main brain of your application. Like this, let's say you have an agentic system where you have the main brain that decides what tool to call, what function to use, or whatever. But those subsystems or very isolated components, I think those are very easily to optimize with custom models and custom whatever.
definitely, this is something I also just saw now. We're trying to build like lead evaluation systems. So whenever you would try to reach out to somebody, try to understand their behavior, their sentiment. The initial approach was, okay, let's just send all the data to ChatGPT and even make it classify the sentiment. Is it happy? Is it not? And then you realize, like, okay, it can work maybe for 10, 100 clients, but if you're sending thousands of requests, the bill for ChatGPT, which people don't even, I mean, people know, but it doesn't come up as like the main topic, is the main constraint that you're going to have. Is like it's going to be so costly. So you need to switch to own custom models doing very specific things. And then, as you said, the main power or the main generation, which you need to generate the final message, for example, like the icebreaker. You can still use ChatGPT for that, but everything else you need to maybe customize just to lower the cost and the latency or something like this. You do not need to use these massive
Yeah,
guns for small tasks.
yeah, exactly. And even you can get, I believe that for very isolated tasks or domains, you can get the same accuracy or maybe even better with a lot lower models. For example, I still believe that using algorithms such as XGBoost or like JBM and this kind of thing on classification, especially, or this very basic task, they're still good enough. I mean, why not? They work so well so far. Why shouldn't they? But I still think that to train such a model, like the time to get there is longer. So it makes so much sense, like to prototype, to build something end to end using these APIs, and then taking component by component and replacing them. And that's why I think that like thinking in interfaces is so powerful in this world of LLMs, because let's say that you have a system with three components. If you define very clearly what the interface and the communication protocols are between them, then you can just quickly build an end-to-end application using LLMs, and then you can easily just take one component out and replace it with something else.
Definitely. No, definitely. Because I feel maybe most of us come from a data science background, which is, if I remember how that whole domain started, everybody can become a data scientist. And it's which is very weird. Like if you look at software engineers, they all studied computer science or something like this. But if you look at a data scientist, honestly, most of the data scientists I know, they come from, I don't know, very different backgrounds, like recruitment, like data analysts, or I don't know, like mathematics, physics, statistics, which is like everybody is gonna be like smart about a very specific thing. What they all lack is a very good fundamentals for software engineering. And we realized this once people need to put stuff in production. You realize, okay, data scientist by himself cannot do this. They needed MLOps or like actual engineers who put this on Kubernetes or whatever. And the whole MLOps thing, I don't know, it started popping out maybe 4 years ago. The whole also was funny enough, if you remember, it was also a hype. There was also an MLOps hype because there were like so many tools. Like the same thing I see now with Gen AI was happening 4 years ago with MLOps. And then a lot of communities happened and like a lot of really interesting stuff. But if you look at it, it's the same as DevOps. So MLOps engineer does, in my opinion, the same job as a DevOps engineer, but has some data knowledge. Might be a controversial statement, but if I look at my day-to-day job, this is what I do. It's like
I think it's 50% true or maybe 70% true.
that's good. I
Because
take that.
if you come with a DevOps background, if you do MLOps, yes, it's a lot easier. But I also think that there are many processes that you need to understand with data and model first in mind. Basically, DevOps extended. So if along your classic Docker registries and code repositories, you need to work with model registries, with data registries. You need to the tracking and reproducibility. It's a lot more complicated because you need to understand how these models are created. Usually the data scale is different. The CI/CD pipelines are different because in a build process, for example, if you start a training in a build process, that's questionable. So yeah, well, you could say it's DevOps on steroids.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree with that. But you said something really interesting. Yeah, like a DevOps extended. So, in my opinion, a DevOps engineer with some data background does a better job than a data scientist with no DevOps background trying to deploy stuff or do or do the switch. Because I tried to do the switch. It was very frustrating. It was very hard. Now I can do both things, but it took a lot of energy. And was really interesting because now ChatGPT can work as like the sparring partner. So you can actually ask it about concepts like, oh, how would you do this? How would you do that? So the access to information is a little bit better. Maybe in 80% of the time, sometimes it just says stupid stuff that is just like, oh my God, you're just wasting my time. But usually it works and it teaches me stuff way quicker than me reading documentation. So that was already cool.
Yeah, I still think that for building architectures and systems and more conceptual stuff, that's where it still lacks. But for like throwing in some documentation, understanding how to implement what you already have in your mind, that is amazing.
That's a very good point. You just said something also interesting. You mentioned that part of the reason you didn't like working for maybe, let's say, smaller clients or whatever was that in a lot of cases you develop POCs, MVPs that never saw the light, which happens it happens so often in data science and machine learning. Not only for like small clients. Like I also work with corporates. It also happens for corporates. Why do you think that is? What's like the main reasons some projects never see the light?
Well, I think expectations are the main problem because people think that with AI you can solve everything and they throw some money, but not enough money and not enough time and not enough resources. And they, after, I don't know, burning not enough money, as I said, that they say, it's not that great and they just stop. So they don't understand like the implications, the real implications of building something like this is they just see some cool demos and they say they want this, but they don't understand that to hire people that can build this and the resources required to build that, it's very expensive. That's the issue from what I've seen. Like I've seen many companies that had one person that it wasn't even a senior, was like a junior or mid who wasn't I kind of had the clue what it was doing, but not completely, trying to build like very complicated stuff. I mean, what do you expect out of that?
That's a very good point. I was talking to you about this hackathon I just did yesterday. It was part of Google, what is it? Google Cloud Consulting Agency. So they work with the corporate where I work, and they did this AI hackathon. They tried to put Gen AI on very specific problems for the business that actually would generate, at least the use case I was working on, like a lot of money. Not sure if I can say the amount here, but like in the millions of savings. So if we can actually solve this problem, increase the efficiency, the cost savings would have been in millions. So that already kind of like opened our eyes. It was like, guys, come on, we need to do something cool. So we gathered around. Everybody was trying to build a chatbot. I'm also not sure if I can say what is it about. Long story short, we presented three teams work on these chatbots, presented three different results, and we ended up winning, my team, just because the other teams did a better job. They had like a nice demo, like even with React, like very beautiful. I would have given them to them, to be honest, because I really like what they did. The only thing that they did wrong, they didn't have enough understanding that you cannot just drop all the business problem inside the prompt. So what they did, we had like a small data set to train on, and they dumped the whole data set as for the prompt for the LLMs, which gave good results, of course, because you just put the whole data set in the prompt because it was small enough to fit. And then the demo looked amazing. And then the people were so fascinated and we're like, oh my God, like this works. It's only after the stakeholders ask, how are you retrieving this data, that we realized they put the whole thing in the prompt. And then they were like, okay, sorry guys, no, this is not how it should be. Like,
If you think about it, this is like a very ingenious way of solving a problem for a hackathon, right? Yeah. For example, if someone asked me this question, I would not be like ashamed for me doing this, but I would have explained them that, hey, in a production or a more serious setup, I would have done X, Y, Z. But here, like I had to do this in one day, so why not?
to be
But
honest,
yeah,
if they would have explained it that way, they probably would have won. They didn't know how to explain it, so the opinion was very negative because they said, "Hey, this is not a scalable solution. We can't do this." And they went
yeah,
out with
well,
the
maybe
solution.
they actually thought this is the right way to do it.
That's the thing. I think they assume this is how it's done, which is also not a bad assumption. Like, I don't know. Especially most of the people were working with Gen AI for the first time. It was more like to give people a hands-on experience how to build these models. But yeah, it's I have to say it's very tough. I mean, as you said, it's very easy to build a very impressive demo on a small data set on a very controlled environment. But I was working with this, and there seems to be now such a like a tendency to put chat everywhere, so you can talk to everything, whether voice, whether text based, and building something like this in production. Oh my God, like also like putting as a live demo and let people play around with it. I was like freaking out. I was like sweating. I was like, oh, like it's so tough because every time you write something that is not so understandable, the AI just freaks out and start like returning errors. So it was really, really difficult to go from a POC to an actual large scale like deployment. So I wouldn't envy the person working on this in production. But you wrote a full book on it, so hopefully you can tell us some interesting insights how to do it properly.
Yeah, would love to. Like full disclosure, what's in the book is not like tested and like into production, but I've researched 2 or 3 years on the topic, and it's done based on that research. Plus my skills that I extrapolated from other fields where I applied it to it, which I think in the end they're quite similar. A lot of software engineering, as I said, and I emphasize a lot in that book. So if people reading it, they will learn a lot, like how to build like a production ready Python package, how to organize it, how to think in classes, functions, interfaces. I emphasize a lot on that because these are unpopular skills that you actually need when you need to scale your code, and when you have to work with multiple people and debug that code and extend it and all of that. And Otherwise, again, I emphasized a lot on MLOps and LLMOps principles. Like, for example, I think that you should start with an orchestration from day one, from an orchestrator from day one into your code. Why? Because it defines very clearly like what your pipelines are. Uh, you should call a pipeline, what's the input, what's the output. It can help you track your configuration files. It can help you track your outputs as artifacts, also version them, which already helps a lot into reproducibility and basically how you run your system. Because I've run many like AI code bases, and they have all these weird CLI commands where you need to hackishly connect some configuration from here and here and there and there. And you can very easily get into that mess because unlike a software system here, in a machine learning system, you have many scripts, many processes that you don't just hit run and that's it. You need like to run one, wait for it, run another, run another, and all of that. And with an orchestrator, you can easily change those things and organize your code very easily. Even if you don't like plan to ship it into cloud, it's a very powerful and easy way to organize your code and call it. And also you have like a nice GUI where you can visualize your run, your steps, and it forces you to think the right way, I believe. Uh, Again, I would start from day one with experiment trackers, model registries, data registries, and all of that. It quickly reduces this confusion and stress of how we should share models, how we should version them, and same for the data. So for me, that's like these tools, like experiment tracker, data registry, model registry, and orchestrator. I think in every code base you should use them. I don't have necessarily a super strong opinion on what tool you should use because I think they're very dependent on your company, on the deals, on the contracts, on the does the company already work with some tools? Do you want to use something self-service? Do you want to host it? So there are many variables that you have like to define before picking a specific tool. Using them from day one, I think it sets your paves the way from production from day one. And also, again, when you think about databases where your data is stored, that's another important thing. So you have to think about, okay, how will the data be accessed in production and how will the data be accessed during training? So usually you can use a feature store, which gives you these features out of the box. But let's say that you don't want to use a feature store for whatever reason. Then I explained in the book how you can be like a virtual feature store where you like build out the main components that a feature store provides. As I said, an offline store where you store your data for training, which is optimized for high throughput. So you need to do batch training. That's what's important for you, not necessarily low latency per item, where like data registries, even like the data registry from Hugging Face for smaller projects, I think it's great and an easy way to move around. And while for inference, you need like a low latency a low latency database that doesn't necessarily need to be optimized for high throughput. For example, in this JN world, if you use a vector DB, that's actually an online store for your features, right? Because your features is that context that you retrieve and throw into to your model. But many systems, actually, you need more than that. You need like, if you use tabular data, many systems actually use tabular data. And if you want to integrate Gen AI into that, you need to understand, okay, how do I integrate the data? Or I think that many systems in the general world are today actually retrieval problems and not LLM problems. As you said, when the data grows, how do you retrieve the right data? Because if you put the right data into the LLM, the problem is solved, but you need to retrieve the right data. And then the problem grows on that side. Like, do I want to use semantic search or do I want to use like tabular semantic search, what I experienced recently, which I think is a really powerful way to integrate your unstructured with structured data. So instead of using SQL or similar queries for your structured data, you can actually leverage embeddings on top of your structured data, where, for example, you want to look, let's say that you have an e-commerce search system, right? And you want to search for products where you have your query, which is embedded into a text embedding as usual, but you can also input like an image, which is as usual embedded and can be used for that search. But at the same time, you can infer the sentiment from that user, like, okay, does the user look for more expensive products that are of higher quality or lower products, of products that are more of lower prices? Is it looking for high reviews? Or basically any filter that you usually have into a search system, you can actually put that into an embedding system. And instead of looking for hard cutoffs, so you want, for example, items only with reviews over 4, it can actually understand that you want to maximize the reviews and just look for the items with the higher reviews instead of the cutoff 4, because we often experience that the thing where I put items with reviews over 4 and no items appear. Or this is like an easy example. But you can apply this to all those fields, which can actually be inferred from the user query. And then it's a really powerful way to actually add these natural searches that you said at some point that every application have this search bar. And yeah, if you just throw in away everything to an LLM, it's confusing. But like using this tabular semantic search, I think it's a quite natural way to like reduce your problem to some constraints where you have control.
That is so cool. I wish we had this conversation literally before yesterday, because one of the main problems we had, the data is tabular and we needed to retrieve the correct information, and you need to be very accurate. So my understanding of semantic search is that it's not, I mean, we can do it in a vector database. You sometimes, like some vector databases are undeterministic, so you can get different results every time you query something. And that thing scared me because I was like, okay, no, we need to get the exact number. Like, let's say it's a sales number for this exact customer. So what we end up doing is to translate the actual human query after understanding the intent to actual SQL, run the SQL on the database, and then the answers you then translate into like a natural language. It worked very well for very simple problems, enough to get us through the hackathon or whatever. But the moment the user started like getting creative, it's like, oh, show me this, group by, filter this. The LLM freaked out. Like it was just not good enough to generate these queries. And now you're saying this is tabular semantics search, which actually I think one of my teammates did suggest this. I didn't know it existed, and kind of was against it, and now I feel stupid.
Yeah,
But
it's hard
yeah,
to.
you live and you learn.
There are so many moving pieces. It's hard to pick, especially in hard hackathon where you need to move fast. You go with what you know usually. But I think it's more stable than text to SQL, especially in these more ambiguous scenarios, because you have a much limited number of possible parameters that you have to inject. Like when you translate a natural query to this tabular semantic search, you have like a few variables that you need to translate between the natural query and your search. When you use SQL, you have a whole programming language that you need to translate to. So the problem is a lot harder. So that when you have ambiguity, that can introduce many, many problems. It's hard to control it.
But under the hood, is it like, what is it doing? Is it also retrieving based on the semantic similarity? So it could technically retrieve different rows or gets confused? Or there's like some
Yeah,
safety?
I'm not completely sure, but I know that it uses just a vector DB. So basically it really embeds the numbers and category variables or whatever. So it still has that non-deterministic aspect to it because it's still semantic search.
I would hope that they would put maybe like rows that are like on this, like let's say columns that are on the same row, put them somewhere in like a cluster so you don't take a number from a different customer and you get like weird shit.
Yeah, look, to be honest, while I've played with it, it always gave me the same result. but maybe that was just because the data set was like only around 50K samples or something like that, which is quite small. I'm not really sure, so I might be talking crazy here.
No, I will definitely give it a try after this episode. But you mentioned also some really good insights, which are currently shared by a lot of people. So I had an episode with Maria Vektomova. I hope I pronounced this correctly. She's also like very big on LinkedIn. She has like a decade of experience in MLOps. Also has some online courses, and one of her things that she said to me that was super surprising is like with this new trend of Gen AI, people started to slowly move away from good principles that it took us maybe a couple years to develop in the MLOps, like as you just said, having an experiment tracker, having a model registry, having stuff that you can reproduce so you can not lose track of the experiments. So these things still like they stood the what's the expression? They stood the uh, yes, that's the one. Yes. So they were like, like they've been there for ages. And now she said one of the things that really surprises her with Gen AI, especially if you're like, let's say you're calling OpenAI API, is the whole evaluation is gone. Like the evaluation set is basically gone. There's no test set. You just getting whatever you are getting from them and then just add it to your application, whether it's a classification problem, especially since if you remember, they introduced this output JSON. So you can force it to give you structured outputs. And then it's basically like a plug and play into your application. So like classify me this, give me this as give me the output as a structured output JSON, and then here you go. Now it's a part of your application. People forgot to evaluate them and forgot to like, I don't know, just check with every version bump. Is it getting worse or better? For example, yesterday, the different models from Google we were trying. So actually the Gemini Flash 1.7 was way better than the Gemini Pro, I think also 1. Not 1.7, 1.5, sorry. And then we tried the Pro, which should be superior with a better context window. It was performing way worse than the Flash. And we were like surprised. And we were like, okay, isn't when you go up and bigger and better, but apparently not always. So you need still to test. You need to, I don't know, just have your usual MLOps frameworks in place.
Yeah, totally. Like for sure, you should test it. But I think that I think this happens because of two main reasons, and I'm curious what do you think? So the first reason is that many people that haven't done machine learning or AI or data science before, they got into this field and they don't know what the heck is evaluation, that they're not used in thinking this way. They're thinking, okay, it's an API, like a weather API, a stocks API, you just call it, you get a result, it always works the same. For that same input, you get the same output, or worst case scenario, the data in their database changes and then the output changes, but you can track that based on some parameters. And that's how they're used into using these tools, the services. And on the second aspect, which I'm always guilty of, it's hard to evaluate such program, maybe not for classification, but for adding more non-deterministic and Gen AI things. It's hard, it's costly, and it takes to some extent time, and not necessarily development time, which it also does, but also like running compute time. You always need to do it. And for example, I've been working like on a small proof of concept now where I integrated more like I've integrated in 4 ways this LLM API for various reasons. And I did an evaluation just on the final application. But yes, you should basically isolate all of this and evaluate them. But I think because you're not forced to go through all this training, evaluation, it actually added more resistance into doing it the right way because it's so easy to plug it in. And then adding all these extra steps that you had done before, it's harder and longer than just building that component itself. I know, I guess it's the lazy nature of ourselves because when you had to train a model, you kind of needed to evaluate the model. So you had that loop in place. No, you don't. You need to do the extra step. to build it. But again, if you want to build like a real production product, yeah, I mean, there's no other way than doing this. But for hackathon projects, quick proof of concept, MVPs even, I think it, it works.
That's a good point. But how would you evaluate it? Like, let's say you have something that is not a typical machine learning problem, something with generation, let's say a chatbot. Like, I wouldn't know how to collect data set to maybe automatically get some numbers that I know, okay, my chatbot is working how it should be. I usually give it to people and I say, play around with it and give me some feedback, which was also qualitative, not quantitative. So it was really hard to do science with these new things. So how do you see this usually happening?
There are ways to evaluate it without having ground truth, and I think that's the easiest way to do it. For example, you have an agentic system where you want to see that for specific inputs, it doesn't hallucinate, like it doesn't go off the rails and going racist or whatever other, like, I don't know, terrorists or whatever other ways that you don't really want to go, what's considered non-ethical in our society. And I think these are quite easy to check because you have like tools like Optic that makes this quite easy. They also have like a nice dashboard where you can see your results and everything. But the key idea is that what you need to manually define are some inputs that you expect your system to work well on, or maybe not work well on, but basically some edge cases that you want to be sure that your system works on. Of course, you can grow this data set, but what I usually do is like define 10, 20 edge cases, put them manually, and then run your agentic system on top of these inputs and aggregate the context that it use to give answers and the specific answers. And then you have these 3 dimensions where you can check your answer relative to your context and relative to your input. Now you can check that, okay, the answer aligns with the question, the answer aligns with the context, the answer does aggregate all the concepts within the context, the answer answers everything from the question, and you can do kind of a precision and recall, a more fuzzy precision and recall on top of this, and also check like for moderations or whatever. If you had ground truth, then you can compute this even more reliably, let's say. But I think it's really hard to get ground truth for these problems. What I've seen that tools like Ragas kind of generate that ground truth. But I don't know. To be honest, I'm skeptical about that.
Yeah, I still haven't tried it, but from what I hear from people building maybe rack systems, it's usually like the go-to solution. So they put this framework and they try to evaluate against it.
Yeah, I like more simpler things, to be honest. That's why, for example, I really like Opic or similar tools that just gives us more simpler options without all this alpha generation stuff. It just hooks into your system and you have like a nice dashboard to check and track. It's like an experiment tracker for this agentic Gen AI systems.
Interesting. I'll have a look at this. What is it called? Opic? Yeah,
Yeah,
the thing
Opic.
you're mentioning.
Opic,
Opic. I'll
and
have a look.
also there's also Lanxius. I've been using Opic personally, but also from what I've seen, Lanxius is a good option.
Yeah, that's also the feedback I've been getting. I would like to talk about your switch. You recently announced you're doing a full-time content creator. How is that going for you so far?
It's going good, I believe, but I realized that I want to do another switch and go to also do consultancy work, because I think that if you go full time into content creation, you kind of need to accept the fact that you will move away from the industry and you need to really like what a content creator means. And which is usually you need to like fame, status, to constantly be in front of the camera, attention, a lot, all of that. And I don't like that. I'm an introvert, and that it really exhausts me.
I can imagine. Yeah, but I'm also an introvert. That's why I like one-on-one conversations. I usually in a group setting, I'm a little bit more quiet. So I guess a podcast is a great place to be, but also publishing videos. LinkedIn has become such a weird place lately. Like I'm really not having a good time on LinkedIn. There's so many, like there's so much, like with AI, there's just so much out there, and it's
Yeah,
just getting.
I never saw LinkedIn as a way to have a good time.
Yeah. I thought it was. I thought from all the social media, I was like, oh, at least we have LinkedIn, like it's
Yeah.
not so
Yeah.
Instagrammy, and now we're slowly going that direction. Um,
I always thought social media is very brain damaging for your attention and all this. And since I started like to do more LinkedIn, I started to experience this myself. Like I often sense how usually I'm more anxious than usual, or like my attention span dropped. And I don't know, probably you haven't saw that in the past month, I don't spend that much time on LinkedIn. Like I had a little bit of activity around the time I post, and that's it. And I answer to DM. That's what I like to talk with people and know people. I think that's the only aspect of it that's it's really amazing. Like talking to you with otherwise
we
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
be here.
possible.
Yeah, honestly, that's the thing. So it has its good and it has its bad. And since I started like posting, being just a little bit more active, I've met around maybe 30 people that like fully knew, like that I cold outreach. So I messaged you, like, hey, would you like to join? Which something I don't usually do. It kind of push you out of the comfort zone to reach out to strangers. And then like now the second time we meet, this is like amazing. And I hope I can meet you maybe one day in Romania as well. So it does open a lot of interesting doors to meet really amazing people who are doing something that is not on the ordinary side. So like as you said, you're doing content, you wrote a book, you also like doing consultancy. It's very refreshing to see these people, and it also motivates you to maybe do more, go outside, just try your own, and see how things are going.
Yeah, same here, especially in Europe, right? Because I keep seeing this Europe is trash vibes in the AI scape. But I personally know the best AI engineers from Europe. Maybe I'm just biased because I'm from here. And it's normal to know more people from here, but still, like I know so many amazing people that work into this domain. Yes.
I totally agree with you. I keep seeing also these memes, like the European meme is like we're interested in a bottle or something. Like I still don't get the meme, like it's such a stupid thing. But every time, I don't know, X or like no, what's the name of this company? SpaceX does something with rockets, and then they just put this meme was like, oh, the US is doing rockets, and we're looking at a water bottle. But I agree with you. There's a lot of really smart people in Europe, and we need to. I mean, maybe part of starting this podcast was to showcase that yeah, there's a lot of really good experts in the AI space that we have. And fun fact about Europe, although people shame us for being so anti-innovation or whatever, a lot of companies actually come to Europe because we have really good data security. They know their data and stuff's going to be in good hands. So people like companies from the US actually prefer to work with European countries just because of this, because we are terrified of making anything against data security. So I
Oh,
guess
yeah, I didn't know
we're
that.
like the perfect
Nice.
market for the US. So that's already
Okay,
something cool.
so Europe is the new Switzerland for data.
it
I
is.
just
It
take
is.
a lot of data.
It
Well,
is.
I guess
It's
that's a good way to market yourself in the end.
yeah. I think it's an advantage and we should use it. And I spoke to a lot of entrepreneurs who's really using this, and they say, yeah, one of our competitive advantage is that we're European based, and US companies love to work with us because they know they're going to be compliant and they're going to be in good hands, basically. So yeah, don't feel ashamed to use that as an argument. But it's getting really tough to stay up to date with everything. Like every 2 days, there's new AI outposts coming up. Uh,
Yeah, but
hey,
personally, I don't think you should. I started introducing this simple system to kind of catch up, but not force it. It's like I have two newsletters that I enjoy reading. The batch from deep learning and AI and Alpha Signal, and they're quite short. Like in 10 minutes, you can go like 10, 20 minutes, depending on the topic and how much you want to go and stay on it. You get a high overview of what's going on, and most of the time you don't need like to go in more depth because the reality is that you need to set yourself a foundation in the niche that you're working, and then you need to specialize a lot into that. And most of the things you need just when you need to do something. You don't need to try everything, because if you try, you go insane. You don't remember anything. You, if you're not like a huge genius that just reads something and just remember it, which most of us are not that kind of person. Yeah, I think it's not like a sustainable long game to like keep running after this.
Definitely, man, definitely. Like I felt like I was getting closer to like a burnout because of this. Because then you see like everything online, and then you want to try it, especially now with the agentic workflows, or like this and that. And if you're in that area, you want to, of course, be like knowledgeable about it, try it out, and then you end up doing a lot of mini projects, doing this and that, and chatbots and voice flows and whatever. I agree with you. Just maybe see what's out there, like knowing that tabular semantics is possible. That's, for example, is an advantage. I don't need to know how it's implemented right now, but I know it's there. So the next time somebody asks me, I can tell them, oh yeah, this thing exists and we can give it a try.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Like
I agree with you.
to have a reference to what's kinda out there, and to know how to connect the dots when the time comes. And then you don't have to understand what's behind the scenes. You go only when it's needed. Like, I'm totally against to be superficial in your work, but there's so many things that are going on that you can deep dive into everything. But you have to understand that, okay, I have these tools and I can use them when required, and I can learn more about them when it's needed. And I think the hardest part is trusting yourself that you're able to learn that thing at the time when time comes, which is hard. I think that's the hardest part, actually, and that eats us alive.
That's so true. There's so many times that I didn't accept like a consultancy work because I was nervous that I'm not able to deliver. And usually when you work full time, you don't have this pressure not to deliver. But when you're working as a consultant or for your own business, you really try to push for deliverables, and you have to deliver within the time frame that you estimated. So it's not only you need to deliver, but you need to deliver on time, which is causing me some hard time to fall asleep. But it's way more exciting because you're working on your reputation, you're working on so many different aspects
Yeah,
of the
yeah, it
business. So
compounds on your what
definitely,
you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the trade off, and I'm
Mm.
with you in the into this 100%.
So we're almost at the end of the episode, and I want to start a new ritual that I'm asking usually my guests to predict what's going to be the next thing in AI. I already got one prediction from the last episode, and I want to gather them and see who actually nailed it down and then post it. It's like, oh, we knew this is going to happen. So I want to ask you, Paul, do you have any AI prediction? What's the next big thing?
Yeah, like the next big thing, to be honest, I think it's robotics.
Oh,
And by
oh no. Robotics taking over humanity or what?
yeah, automating a lot of stuff. Like, to be, I know the most basic example is like having a general base robot that in your house and all your laundry, dishes, and all this stuff. But not, of course, they will be used in factories and everywhere, like this repetitive works. And I think they already are, but they're more like not in human-like form. They're very integrated and rigid. I think the new robots will be more general based, like the LLMs, right? So now the robots, how the classical models were before, and the next big thing will be like when the LLMs come, general robots that you can use on whatever task you need at hand. That's one thing. And in genomics, I think that will be actually huge, which will probably change our species forever, where we'll be able like to change our DNA and engineer it to our liking. But I'm scared of that. I'm the most scared about, because not about the technology itself, but about the people that will get access to that technology. Because I think if we will not use it right, it will completely create more poles in our society, and there will be just a few people that will live forever, or whatever superpowers they will engineer for themselves, and the bugs.
Interesting. What would you want to change? Like if they give you the liver to change something,
In what, like whatever, in changing something, or regarding this
like in
biotech?
yourself, like if somebody gives you the key to do like a genetic mutation and then you have this, I don't know, new thing.
I don't know, I guess to live forever, what everybody wants, right?
Really? Okay. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I don't know what I
Yeah,
would
like
change.
I love my life. I would like to extend it as much as possible.
Well, that's sweet. That's a good answer. I like that. All right, Paul. Thank you so much for joining me. This was really, really insightful and I had a great time. I hope also that the people who listened enjoyed and they learned a thing or two about actual like use cases that's been applied. So thank you for joining me. Wish you all the best with whatever coming towards you in this new year. And I hope to see you very soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for having me. It was a great chat. Hopefully we can do this in the future again.
Definitely. All right. Take care. Bye bye.